"Don't turn me away. I can give you what no other woman will," said the Apache woman in the cold. The winter wind howled mercilessly across the empty highway, carrying snowflakes that danced wildly before settling on the frozen ground. The small roadside diner sat like an island in the storm, its windows fogged with the warmth inside. A single neon sign flickered, casting a dim orange glow across the icy parking lot. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee, fried eggs, and bread fresh from the morning batch. The chatter of a few early patrons and the clinking of cutlery created a quiet comfort, a soft contrast to the harshness of the storm outside. James sat in a corner booth, hunched over a chipped mug of coffee that had long since gone lukewarm. He wore a heavy brown coat, threadbare in places, and his hands, rough and calloused from years of hard work, trembled slightly from the cold he had battled outside. His face told the story of a man who had lived too long on the road, carrying the loneliness of endless nights away from home. His eyes, tired and wary, scanned the diner with a kind of half-hearted curiosity, noting the waitress moving swiftly between tables and the small family near the window, laughing softly at something only they could understand. The door to the diner burst open suddenly, letting in a rush of icy wind that made the lights flicker for a moment. A tall woman stepped in, her long dark hair dusted with snow and her shawl clinging tightly to her shoulders. There was something unusual about the way she carried herself, a mixture of confidence and fragility, like she had faced more storms than this world could show. Her deep brown eyes scanned the room, pausing on James as if she had been looking for him all along. She walked with slow, deliberate steps toward the counter, brushing snow from her shawl. James watched her, curiosity battling the instinct to look away. There was something familiar about her presence, though he had never seen her before. When she spoke, her voice was calm yet insistent, and it cut through the low hum of conversation like a clear bell. "Don't turn me away. I can give you what no other woman will," she said, her gaze steady and unwavering. James felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. The words made him shift uncomfortably in his seat. Part of him wanted to dismiss her as a stranger who had simply lost her way in the snow. But another part, a deeper, quieter part of him, felt a tug of curiosity he couldn't ignore. The woman stepped closer, and James noticed the determination in her eyes. She wasn't asking for charity, nor was she seeking shelter for comfort alone. There was a purpose in her presence, a quiet intensity that made him sit a little straighter. He watched as she moved to an empty booth across the room and settled in, her eyes still never leaving him. Minutes passed and the waitress finally approached her. The woman ordered a simple meal, bread, soup, and coffee, but her attention never wavered from James. She seemed to be measuring something, gauging whether he was willing to listen. James tried to return to his coffee, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something he hadn't expected. Finally, curiosity won. He stood and walked toward her booth, each step heavy with hesitation. She smiled faintly when he approached, a small gesture that carried warmth and recognition. "I'm James," he said cautiously, his voice hoarse from the cold. The woman nodded, her smile gentle but firm. "I know," she replied simply. "I have something for you, something no one else can give. But you have to be willing to see it. I don't even know you." He hadn't realized how much he had been struggling until now. The endless nights on the road, the loneliness that gnawed at him, the quiet fear that he had missed his chance to change his life. And here was this stranger, this woman in the cold, speaking as if she had been waiting for him. He hesitated, unsure whether to walk away or sit. Something inside him told him that walking away wasn't an option, not yet. Instead, he pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, keeping his hands wrapped tightly around the warm mug. The woman's eyes softened. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said. "I'm here because I see something in you, something worth saving. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe in you for you to start believing in yourself." "My name is Nayeli," she said, offering her hand. "I know it's unusual to meet someone like me in a place like this, But I've been through things, hard things, and I've learned how to survive them, not just physically but emotionally, spiritually. I can show you how to do the same." He felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. Was he ready to accept help from someone he had just met? Could he trust a stranger in the middle of a snowstorm? Something in Nayeli's gaze told him that she understood his hesitation. "You don't have to believe me now," she said softly. "But I'll be here, and if you're willing, I can show you a way through. A way to face the things you've been running from all your life." Outside, the snow continued to fall, relentless and unyielding. But inside, in that small booth, the storm seemed to fade, leaving only the possibility of change. James sipped his coffee again, feeling it warm his hands and strangely his heart. He didn't yet know what lay ahead or how this meeting would change him. But in that moment, he realized something important. Sometimes, the people who appear in your life unexpectedly, in the harshest conditions, are the ones who have the power to awaken the parts of you you didn't know existed. And Nayeli, the Apache woman in the cold, had arrived just at the right time. The snowstorm outside showed no sign of slowing, and the cold pressed against the diner windows like an uninvited guest. James sat across from Nayeli, unsure if he should speak or simply observe her. There was something magnetic about her presence. He didn't understand why he felt drawn to her, yet every instinct in his body told him this meeting was important. Nayeli studied him quietly for a moment, then leaned forward, her hands clasped over the table. "You look tired," she said softly. "Not just physically. There's a weight you carry, a weight most people never see." He had spent years on the road, moving from one city to another, never staying long enough to build anything meaningful. His work had been honest but lonely, leaving little room for friendships, love, or hope. He had grown used to silence, to emptiness. And yet in Nayeli's gaze he felt understood. I guess I'm tired," he admitted finally. His voice was quiet, almost embarrassed. "I've been on the road for years. Life doesn't seem to stop, and neither do the problems. And I've learned that the hardest part isn't surviving the storm. It's surviving yourself when you feel trapped by it." He noticed the calm in her demeanor, the way she carried herself as if every hardship had shaped her into someone stronger. There was something comforting about that strength. Nayeli continued, her voice low but steady. "I've seen people like you before, good people trying to live their lives but weighed down by fear, regret, and isolation. And sometimes, it takes someone from the outside to help them see things differently, to show them what they're capable of." But Nayeli spoke with understanding, almost as if she could see his past, his struggles, even the choices he wished he could undo. "You talk like you know me," James said, still skeptical. "But we've only just met. How can you understand?" The truth has a way of revealing itself. And right now, your heart is asking for help, even if you don't realize it. "I don't know if I can do what you're talking about," he said, shaking his head. "I'm not sure I have the strength left. I can help you find it, but you have to be willing to try. That's all it takes to start. One small step. And that step will lead to another and another until you begin to see possibilities you never imagined." She talked about growing up on the Apache reservation, learning from elders who taught her resilience, survival skills, and respect for the land and people. She described hardships she had endured, family struggles, moments of loneliness, and times when she had to rely on her inner strength to survive. James listened intently, fascinated. He realized that what she offered wasn't just advice. It was experience, hard-earned wisdom. Nayeli spoke about the importance of understanding oneself, facing fears, and finding purpose even in the harshest conditions. She explained that life could feel cold and unforgiving, but with the right perspective, anyone could navigate it without losing themselves completely. He began to feel a subtle shift within himself, a spark of hope he hadn't felt in years. The walls he had built around his heart, designed to protect him from disappointment, were starting to crack. And though he didn't fully understand Nayeli yet, he felt a sense of trust building, a trust he hadn't allowed anyone to earn in a long time. At one point, Naomi paused and looked at him seriously. "James, I can give you guidance, but I cannot walk your path for you. You must do the work yourself. You have to face your fears, confront your regrets, and decide what kind of life you want. I can help you see the way, but only you can take the steps." But he realized they were exactly what he needed to hear. The storm outside intensified, making the diner feel even more like a sanctuary. James noticed the way Naomi seemed unaffected by the cold, as if she carried an inner fire that kept her warm. He wondered how someone could endure so much and remain so composed, so full of quiet strength. They continued talking, sharing stories, asking questions, and exploring ideas about life, purpose, and survival. James found himself opening up in ways he hadn't imagined possible. He spoke about his regrets, the family he had drifted from, the dreams he had abandoned. Naomi listened without judgment, nodding thoughtfully and offering insights that were simple yet profound. Hours passed unnoticed. The diner emptied as the morning turned into afternoon. Waitresses came and went, refilled coffee cups and tidied tables, but James and Naomi remained engrossed in their conversation. For the first time in a long time, James felt a sense of connection, not just with Naomi but with the world outside himself. "You've carried so much alone," Naomi said quietly. "But you don't have to anymore. You can start small. You can take one step at a time and begin to change your life. But the first step is believing that change is possible." But he felt ready, at least a little. He had come to the diner seeking warmth from the cold, and instead he had found warmth for his heart, a sense that he was not entirely alone, that help could come from unexpected places. Naomi smiled softly, sensing his internal struggle. "You don't need to understand everything now. Just know that you are capable and you are not alone." That is the beginning. That is where the journey starts. The rest of the afternoon passed in quiet reflection. James watched Naomi as she spoke, observed her gestures, and listened to the cadence of her voice. Every word she shared carried meaning. Every story hinted at lessons he could apply to his own life. And slowly, the fear and skepticism that had defined him for so long began to soften. By the time the storm finally began to ease, James felt lighter. He realized that the encounter with Naomi was more than a chance meeting. It was a turning point. She had come into his life at the perfect moment, challenging him to face himself, yet offering the guidance to do it safely, carefully, and thoughtfully. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow across the diner, James felt a quiet determination settle in his heart. The storm outside had been harsh, relentless, and unforgiving, but inside he had found a different kind of storm, a storm of change, possibility, and awakening. And at the center of that storm, quietly guiding him, was Naomi, the Apache woman in the cold, whose presence promised a new beginning, if only he was willing to take it. The days that followed James's encounter with Naomi passed strangely for him. He returned to his usual routines on the road, driving long stretches of highway, stopping at diners, and sleeping in motels that felt increasingly empty. Yet, everywhere he went, he carried a lingering sense of the woman he had met in the snowstorm, the Apache woman whose words had unsettled him, yet given him a strange sense of clarity. Her presence was a quiet echo in his mind, reminding him that life could be different if he was willing to take the steps she had spoken about. At first, James tried to dismiss it. He told himself he had been captivated by the warmth and kindness of someone who had appeared in the cold at just the right time. It was easy to say that. It was harder to admit that he had been longing for change, for guidance, for someone to help him see the possibilities in his life. Naomi had forced him to confront truths he had long ignored, and avoiding those truths now seemed impossible. One night, while parked at a quiet rest stop, James found himself staring at the frozen highway through the windshield. The world outside was silent except for the occasional gust of wind brushing over the empty lot. He thought about the conversation he had shared with Naomi. Her words had been simple, but they had a weight that pressed on his mind. "Strength isn't about never being afraid," she had said. "Strength is about moving forward even when fear is present." Her words forced him to confront that drifting, to acknowledge the fear that had quietly shaped his decisions. By the next morning, James had made a decision. He would seek her out again. He didn't know where she was, and he wasn't even sure if she was expecting him, but something deep inside urged him to find her. He had to understand more. He had to see the path she had hinted at and learn how to navigate it for himself. The search was not easy. Nayeli had not given him an address or a phone number, only the memory of that small diner in the storm. James drove from town to town, revisiting diners and rest stops along the highway. He asked questions politely, careful not to reveal too much, but no one seemed to know her. For days, he felt a mixture of frustration and hope, unsure if he was chasing a ghost or following a genuine chance to change his life. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, he saw her. She was standing outside a small convenience store, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, the last rays of sunlight catching her hair. James pulled over, his heart pounding with recognition and relief. Nayeli turned slightly as if she had sensed his approach, and a faint smile touched her lips. "You found me," she said quietly, her voice calm but carrying the same strength he had remembered. James parked and approached, trying to calm the rush of emotions inside him. I had to," he said. "I needed to understand what you meant. I needed to see how I could change. The hardest step is often the first. I've been running for too long. I've avoided my past, ignored my mistakes, and stayed in a kind of routine that made me feel safe but empty. I want to live differently, but I don't know where to start. The next step is understanding yourself. You must face your past honestly, without blame or shame. Only then can you build the future you desire. You cannot run from what you are. You must meet it, accept it, and then decide what to do next." He had spent years pretending these things didn't matter, but Nayeli's calm insistence forced him to face them. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," he admitted. His voice was low, almost breaking. "I've spent so long hiding from everything. What if I can't handle it?" Strength is moving forward despite them. You are already stronger than you realize. I will guide you, but only you can walk the path. Nayeli's presence was a reminder that he didn't have to face it alone. Over the next few days, James and Nayeli began to spend more time together. She taught him small but meaningful lessons about life and self-awareness. They spoke about daily choices, the importance of honesty with oneself, and the value of reflection. Nayeli encouraged him to write down his thoughts, confront uncomfortable emotions, and acknowledge the things he had long avoided. It was not easy. James struggled with anger, frustration, and self-doubt. Old habits of avoidance surfaced, tempting him to give up. But each time, Nayeli's calm guidance and unwavering belief in him reminded him that perseverance was key. "The road is long," she said one evening, "and it will test you, but you are capable. You can endure more than you think. You will face obstacles, fear, and uncertainty. But if you keep moving step by step, you will find your path." Nayeli's guidance was not about giving him answers. It was about showing him how to navigate his own journey. As the days passed, James began to notice small changes within himself. He felt more alert, more thoughtful, and more willing to confront uncomfortable truths. His fear of failure remained, but it no longer paralyzed him. He started keeping a journal, reflecting on his actions and intentions, and slowly began to take steps toward repairing relationships he had neglected. The turning point became clear to him one night as they sat outside under a sky full of stars. James realized that Nayeli had not given him a magic solution. She had given him something far more valuable: perspective, courage, and the belief that he could change. "You've done more than you know," Nayeli said softly, sensing his realization. "Change is not instant. It is a series of choices made one after another, and you've already begun. That is the turning point." From here, it is up to you to keep moving forward. It was a responsibility he had to embrace. For the first time in years, James felt hope that wasn't fleeting. He understood that the path ahead would be difficult, filled with obstacles and moments of doubt. But with Nayeli's guidance and his own determination, he could face it. He had reached the turning point, the moment when fear and hesitation gave way to clarity and resolve. As the cold wind whispered through the trees and the stars glimmered above, James made a silent promise to himself. He would not waste this opportunity. He would face his past, embrace the present, and step forward into a future shaped by choice, courage, and self-awareness. And beside him, Nayeli smiled quietly, knowing that he had begun the journey that would transform his life forever. After the turning point, James felt a new sense of purpose stirring within him. The words and lessons Nayeli had shared kept returning to his mind like echoes, guiding him as he tried to face the life he had long ignored. But change, he quickly realized, was not a simple or immediate process. It was a slow, sometimes painful journey, filled with obstacles and moments when old habits threatened to pull him back into the safety of routine. The first challenge came quietly, almost unnoticed. As James tried to reconnect with his own thoughts and emotions, memories he had long suppressed began to surface. He remembered arguments with family he had left behind, friendships he had neglected, and opportunities he had let slip through his fingers. These recollections were not gentle, they were sharp, reminding him of regrets he could no longer ignore. At times, he felt overwhelmed, as if the weight of years of avoidance had been compressed into a single, suffocating moment. Nayeli noticed the strain in his expressions during their conversations. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills and cast long shadows across the frozen landscape, she spoke quietly. "Change is not easy, James," she said. "It is never easy. Facing yourself is harder than facing any storm outside, but it is necessary. Every time you confront a fear, every time you face a regret, you grow stronger. Every step counts, even when it hurts." Each morning he woke with determination, only to find that old habits, avoidance, distraction, and hesitation, crept back into his routines. It frustrated him, but Nayeli reminded him gently that setbacks were part of the journey, not a reason to quit. Work was one of the first areas where he began to feel the challenge. James had always taken jobs that required minimal responsibility, avoiding leadership or long-term commitments. Now, he tried to approach his work with a new mindset, taking initiative, being more organized, and interacting more meaningfully with colleagues. But the world outside did not immediately reward his efforts. Mistakes happened, and his old reputation for being distant and unreliable lingered. Some colleagues were skeptical, even dismissive, and old insecurities rose to the surface, tempting him to retreat. One afternoon, after a particularly frustrating day at work, James called Nayeli. Her calm voice on the line reassured him, but he still struggled to accept her advice fully. "It's okay to stumble," she said. "The important part is that you keep moving forward. Growth is not about perfection, it's about persistence." Some nights the fear and self-doubt were almost too much to bear. Yet, he kept writing in his journal, as Nayeli had suggested, pouring his thoughts onto paper, facing the truths he had long avoided. The act of writing became both a release and a challenge, a way to confront the shadows of his past without being consumed by them. Family was another difficult area. James had avoided contacting his younger sister for years, ashamed of the distance that had grown between them. Encouraged by Nayeli, he decided to reach out. The first conversation was awkward, filled with pauses, silence, and unspoken tension. But over time, they began to rebuild a fragile connection. It was not easy. Old resentments surfaced, and emotions ran high. But James found that the effort to repair these relationships brought a sense of healing he hadn't expected. Nayeli had told him that reconciliation would take time, and he had learned the value of patience. Even as he made progress, new challenges arose. The habits of a lifetime do not disappear quickly, and old fears tried to regain control. Moments of doubt crept in at unexpected times, an argument with a coworker, a memory of failure, or simply the loneliness of traveling alone on long stretches of highway. During these moments, James felt like giving up, questioning whether the effort to change was worth it. But every time he faltered, Naomi's lessons returned to him, the importance of persistence, courage, and self-awareness. One particularly harsh moment came when James received news that an old friend, someone he had promised to support but had failed, was struggling. Guilt washed over him, and he felt the familiar pull of avoidance. For hours he sat in silence, unsure whether to respond or retreat. But he remembered Naomi's words, "Facing your fears, your past, and your responsibilities is the only way forward. Running only prolongs the struggle." It was a small act, but it reminded him that change was not about grand gestures. It was about consistent, meaningful actions, even when they were uncomfortable. That day, James realized that growth came not from perfection, but from persistence, honesty, and courage. The emotional struggle was accompanied by physical challenges as well. James had always avoided self-care, letting his health and well-being slide while focusing on survival and work. Now, encouraged by Naomi, he tried to incorporate small routines, exercise, healthier meals, and moments of reflection. The changes were minor but significant. He discovered that caring for himself made it easier to face the emotional challenges of his past, giving him a renewed sense of energy and focus. Through it all, Naomi remained a quiet guide. She did not provide solutions or remove obstacles from his path. Instead, she offered perspective, insight, and encouragement, reminding James that the power to change lay within him. Her guidance was not always easy to hear. Sometimes, it required him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself, accept responsibility for his actions, and face fears he had long avoided. But every step, no matter how small, brought a sense of progress and empowerment. Slowly, James began to notice a shift within himself. He was less reactive to challenges, more patient with himself and others, and increasingly aware of his own thoughts and emotions. The process was gradual, and the struggles were ongoing, but he felt a sense of control over his life he had never known before. The storm of his past was not gone, but he had learned to navigate it with courage and determination. One evening, as he and Naomi sat by a small fire outside a cabin she had rented for a short stay, James reflected on the journey so far. "I never realized how much I was running from," he said quietly. "I thought I was moving forward, but I was just avoiding myself. Now that you see what was holding you back, you have the power to take action. The struggle is part of the process. It is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of growth." The work was far from over, but he now understood that progress was measured in persistence, reflection, and courage, not instant results. The days turned into weeks, and James continued to face the challenges of change. He stumbled at times, felt doubt creep in, and struggled with old habits, but with Naomi's guidance and his growing resilience, he persevered. Each obstacle became an opportunity to practice the lessons she had taught him: honesty, patience, self-awareness, and the courage to face his fears. Through the struggles, James discovered a new sense of strength within himself. He realized that life would always present difficulties, but the way he responded to them had changed. He no longer felt trapped by his past, nor paralyzed by fear. Instead, he felt capable of navigating the challenges ahead with intention and awareness. By confronting the consequences of his past actions and persevering through the struggles of change, James reached a point where he could see the fruits of his efforts. Relationships were slowly mending, his sense of purpose was growing, and his confidence in himself strengthened. Yet he remained humble, understanding that change was a journey, not a destination, and that the lessons he had learned would continue to guide him for the rest of his life. Through it all, Naomi remained a constant presence, not as a savior but as a guide and mentor. Her faith in him, quiet yet unwavering, gave him the courage to keep moving forward, even when the path was steep and the nights were long. The journey of struggle and consequence had transformed James, revealing the depth of his resilience and the potential for growth that had always existed within him. And as he looked out over the snow-covered landscape one evening, feeling the crisp winter air on his face, James understood a truth he had long resisted. The challenges he faced were not punishments or obstacles, but opportunities. Each struggle, each moment of doubt, was a chance to grow stronger, wiser, and more compassionate toward himself and others. The journey was far from over, but James knew that with patience, courage, and guidance from those who truly cared, he could continue to face life's challenges and shape his future with intention and hope. The winter snow had begun to melt, revealing glimpses of the road and the world beyond. James had changed in ways he could feel but still struggled to fully articulate. Each day brought challenges, as it always would, but there was a subtle difference now. He felt grounded, aware, and capable of handling life rather than running from it. The lessons Naeli had taught him were no longer abstract ideas. They had become tools he could use to navigate the complexities of his life. It was a crisp morning when James realized the magnitude of the transformation he had undergone. He was sitting on the porch of the small cabin where he had spent the last weeks with Naeli, sipping hot tea and watching the sunlight touch the tips of the trees. His journal lay open beside him, filled with reflections, insights, and notes about his journey. Each page told a story of struggle, courage, and growth, marking the path he had walked from despair to hope. He thought about his family, the relationships he had begun to mend. His sister had responded warmly to his efforts, and the distance between them had started to shrink. The conversations were awkward at times, filled with pauses and tentative words, but they were real. And real was what mattered most. The reconciliation had reminded him that the bonds we cherish can survive neglect and distance, as long as we are willing to act with honesty and effort. Work, too, had become a place where he could demonstrate the lessons he had learned. He approached tasks with care, patience, and diligence, engaging with colleagues in ways he never had before. While the results were not perfect, they were authentic, and the authenticity began to earn respect. The small victories, the successful completion of a project, a thoughtful conversation, a kind gesture, accumulated into a sense of accomplishment and confidence that had been foreign to him before. Yet it was not just external changes that marked his progress. The internal shift was more profound. James had learned to listen to himself, to recognize fear and doubt without letting them control his decisions. He had learned that emotions were not enemies to be suppressed, but signals to be understood and managed. The practice of reflection, journaling, and mindful awareness that Naeli had encouraged allowed him to navigate daily life with clarity and intention. One afternoon, Naeli joined him on the porch, her presence calm and reassuring as always. They watched a pair of birds flit through the trees, their movements deliberate and unhurried. James felt a warmth in his chest as he realized how much he had come to value these quiet moments of observation and reflection. "You've come a long way," Naeli said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "The journey is never truly finished, but you have learned to move forward with awareness. You have faced yourself, and that is something few people ever do. Life will always bring challenges, setbacks, and doubts, but your response to them determines the path you walk. You've chosen to face them, and that choice shapes your future." And through her presence and teachings, he had discovered strength, resilience, and clarity he did not know he possessed. The days that followed were filled with quiet accomplishments. James continued to rebuild relationships, not only with family but with old friends he had drifted from over the years. He reached out to colleagues and acquaintances with honesty and goodwill, seeking to understand and repair the gaps his absence had created. Some relationships required more effort than others, and not all were fully restored, but the process itself became a source of satisfaction and pride. Naeli encouraged him to explore new opportunities beyond the routine of his past life. James began to take small steps toward personal goals he had long abandoned. He revisited hobbies he had loved, considered educational opportunities, and even thought about volunteering to help those in need. These were not grand gestures, but each action reinforced his sense of purpose and agency. One evening, James found himself walking along a quiet path near the cabin, reflecting on the months that had passed. The snow had mostly melted, leaving patches of earth and grass exposed to the early warmth of spring. He thought about the man he had been before meeting Naeli, the man weighed down by fear, regret, and loneliness, and compared him to the person he had become, someone willing to face challenges, accept responsibility, and act with intention. The contrast was stark, and it filled him with a quiet sense of awe. He realized that the journey of change was not about erasing the past, but about learning from it and using those lessons to shape a better future. Every hardship, every mistake, and every moment of doubt had contributed to the person he was becoming. Naeli joined him on the path, her steps light and confident. She did not speak immediately, allowing James to walk in thoughtful silence. After a while, she said, "You've grown, James. Not because I taught you, but because you chose to face yourself and your life. Guidance is only effective when it meets willingness and effort, and you have provided both. But I see now that the effort had to come from me." James maintained his routines, balanced his work and personal life, and continued to face challenges with patience and resilience. He had moments of doubt, of course, but they no longer controlled him. Each setback became an opportunity to apply the lessons he had learned, to adjust, reflect, and persevere. One afternoon, he decided to visit the diner where he had first met Naeli. The memories of that snowy night came rushing back, the warmth of the diner, the scent of coffee and bread, and the first words that had sparked his journey. "Don't turn me away, I can give you what no other woman will." He smiled quietly, realizing now the depth of her meaning. She had given him something far greater than material help or fleeting comfort. She had given him insight, courage, and a path toward a life of awareness and purpose. As he sat in the same booth where their conversation had begun, James reflected on the journey he had taken. He had faced fear, regret, and uncertainty. He had struggled with old habits and confronted painful memories. He had reached out to rebuild relationships, faced professional challenges, and learned to listen to himself with honesty and compassion. And through it all, Naeli's guidance had been a steady light, illuminating the path without dictating it. James realized that the transformation he had experienced was not the end of his journey, but a new beginning. The man he had been, lost, hesitant, and uncertain, had not disappeared entirely. He carried the lessons of the past with him, using them to navigate the present and shape the future. He understood now that change was not a destination but a lifelong process, one that required courage, patience, and persistence. As he left the diner, stepping into the cool air and feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, James felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had been given a chance to see himself clearly, to confront his fears, and to take meaningful action toward a better life. And in that process, he had discovered the strength, resilience, and clarity that had always existed within him, waiting to be awakened. Naeli's presence, though now quiet and distant, remained a guiding force in his mind. He knew that she would continue her journey elsewhere, helping others as she had helped him. But her impact on his life was permanent, shaping not only his choices but his understanding of what it meant to live with purpose and courage. James took one final look at the landscape around him, the melting snow, the awakening earth, and the open road stretching ahead. He felt ready to face whatever came next, armed with the lessons of the past, the strength of his present, and the hope of a future shaped by conscious choice. The storm of his earlier life had passed, leaving behind clarity, resilience, and the quiet knowledge that he could endure and grow, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As he walked away from the diner, James carried with him the truth he had discovered through struggle, guidance, and reflection. That life's greatest gifts are not easy or immediate, but are earned through courage, awareness, and the willingness to face oneself honestly. And with that understanding, he stepped forward, fully present, ready to shape a life of purpose, connection, and hope.